Hello everybody, welcome to VTS19 for September 2006. I don't have any dramatic music to play there. If I did, I would play it, but I can't find any dramatic music that isn't protected by copyright laws of various planets and solar systems. Anyways, welcome aboard. I'm glad everybody's here. For you new folks, I'm glad you came along and tried this out. I hope you get a lot out of it. For you folks who've been with us for a while, thanks for sticking around. I hope you get a lot out of it too. We've been in a conversation recently about a lot of mechanics, a lot of how do you animate kind of stuff. A lot of stuff about, gee, what does it take to really just get the job done? We're kind of continuing on this track. We're going to keep talking about what's quality animation, but not only what's quality, but how to make it. Because that seems to be a real challenge for a lot of folks. And a lot of folks I talk to again and again, they struggle with how. The struggling with how puts us in a position where when we're always thinking about, well, how do I draw a line? It's difficult for us to express anything with that line because we're always just wondering, well, is that the right way to draw? Is that the right way to do that? When I try it this way, it doesn't look good. So maybe there's a different way. And so we spend all our time trying to find a way to do it. I've come up with a way that works for me. And through these past VTS videos and through a few more, we're going to take a look at what specifically I do and how I apply these sorts of things. It's a bit of a technical diversion from the art of animation side of things. But you see, you can't express the art unless you know the technique. That's just the reality of it. If you want to sit down and you want to express something unique and wonderful and beautiful with watercolor paintings, but you don't know a thing about how to control watercolors, it's very difficult. I know, I've tried. So we're going to continue on, and the thing we've been talking about the last month, and we're going to continue it this month, is breakdowns, because it has been said that animation is all in the breakdowns. So while animation is all in the breakdowns, well, somebody's also said animation's all in the posing, or it's all in the timing. A lot of people think that animation's all in one thing. Well, it's not all in one thing, but there are things that are really important, and breakdowns are really important. So last month we talked about what the heck is a breakdown? Where did it start? Why did they invent it? What was the purpose? What does it do? And we just talked in general about what breakdowns do and how a good breakdown can make the difference between motion and, wow, that's really neat motion. And animation, if nothing else, should at least be fun to watch, or entertaining to watch, or it'll be like, wow, that was neat, because I can watch anybody walk down the street normal, or I can watch anybody pick up a newspaper normally. Animation should be fun, or at the very least entertaining. So we should keep a hold of that root of our art form, and breakdowns really help us describe that. So this month we're gonna take some time and really dig in and start thinking really deeply about what a breakdown is. What kinds of breakdowns are there? There's more than one kind. What purpose they serve, and where do they come in the whole flow of doing things. So before we ramble on anymore, let's get to it. All right. See, there's a problem in animation, and it's that ultimately it comes down to every frame is a different drawing. And every drawing could be started from scratch, but then you'd end up with stuff that ends up looking kind of hoppy and poppy, and because you can't really, as much as you try, you can't really perfectly get that stuff to work. This is where CG animation is really good. CG is very good at the math of going from A to B, because there's a certain vector, linear, blah blah blah, propeller head kind of thing. Well, CG is really good at it. It's really good at figuring out how to get from A to B in a relatively smooth incremental line. Okay? The problem is that that's not particularly interesting, although it is helpful when you want stuff to be smooth. Okay? Well, what we have is sometimes, I'll describe a common thing that happens. I'll talk to a younger animator and they'll say, okay, well, so you really think I should thumbnail things? I'm like, yeah, you should really definitely thumbnail your workout. Try and figure and understand what's going on so that you can at least understand it before you get in the computer. Okay, so they get in there and they draw some poses. And I'm like, yeah, looks good. And then they draw some breakdowns based off of those drawings of poses. I'm like, oh, okay, that works. And then they draw more drawings of more breakdowns based off of those previous breakdowns and previous poses, right? And I'm like, okay, looks a lot. You have really studied through the motion. You really understand what's going on here. And they say, great. And so they take this pile of drawings, probably 30 or 40 of them, and they go to the computer and they try to recreate each one as if they are all equally the same. As if they are all the same importance, if they are all the same value. And what they get is motion that goes. The reason why is because everything isn't the same value. It isn't the same importance. Okay? How did they start? They started by drawing key poses. Okay? Based off of those drawings, they drew some breakdowns. Then based off of those drawings and the previous drawings, they drew more breakdowns or other things. Maybe for more arc, maybe for more overlap, maybe an anticipation, maybe a moving hold. I mean, they drew lots of different things. So they go to the computer and they say, okay, drawing one. It doesn't matter if it's a pose, a breakdown, it doesn't matter. It's drawing one. So they recreate drawing one with their puppet. Oh, it looks kind of close. Oh, good. Drawing two. Next frame. All right, I'll just move and puppet around and kind of make it look like drawing two. Great. All right. Drawing three. And they do this through their stack of 30 drawings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I've done this before, and I know other people have. And then you hit play, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's horrible. What happened? There's a hierarchy of information in the development and creation of anything, not just of animation. Think of anything. Before you put in the seats to a car, you make the frame to the car. Yeah? Before you paint the house, you put the foundation for the house. Before you frost the cake, you bake the cake. Okay? Everything in the world that is created by human beings has a hierarchy of process. There are what we call dependencies. Something depends on something else to happen first. Okay? Consistent through everything. Everything we do. Everything we do has a level of dependency upon previous activities or accomplishments or stages or whatever. All right? Animation is no different. If you're going to make animation, you have to understand that there's a certain process of dependencies on things. Okay? This will help clear up some things for you. I hope. Okay? So what is this hierarchy? Well, a hierarchy of dependency says that you can't do B until you have A. And anything you do at A will change what B looks like. Okay? If you have a square cake, when you frost it, you're going to frost it in a certain way so that it squares up. Okay? Frosting a cake isn't terribly difficult, but I have challenges with it. Now, if you have a round cake, how you go about frosting it is going to be a little bit different because you don't have any corners. Okay? If you have a heart-shaped cake, you have to be pretty talented in the old frosting department. This is where I fall down. And you have to get into those little heart crevices and stuff. Again, it's pretty tricky stuff, this frosting of cakes. But you notice that you can't put square frosting on a round cake. It doesn't work. Okay? You just can't do it. Frosting depends on the cake. Therefore, frosting is a step B process. And the cake is a step A process, okay? Even within the step A process, there's other minor sub-processes, okay? But we're just talking globally here, okay? So, what does that mean for animation? Even though every drawing shows up on screen, every frame shows up on screen, not every frame is equal in the development of the scene. Every frame is important, but not every frame is equal in importance in development. Okay? So let's take a look at our hierarchy. First is key poses. Key poses. What are key poses? These are the things that define the character, the emotion, the moment, the energy, and the performance. Good key poses, you could crossfade them in an editing program and make a story. No motion whatsoever. In fact, I've seen little short films done like this, where you just take wonderful illustrations and you crossfade the illustrations and you get a sense of progression, of narration, of movement, even though nothing's really moving. All you're doing is crossfading drawings, okay? Those successful drawings are key poses. All right? They are the bedrock to your scene. If you take a look at my Murray scene that we were working on, somewhere around VTS19, we wrapped them up as far as the key blocking went. Those are all key poses. Okay, just key poses. VTS17, take a look at it, okay? What you have there is those things define the character, the performance, the moment, the emotion, okay, and the energy of the thing. Is it an upbeat scene, a downbeat scene? Is it you know, energetic, or is it kind of mopey? You know, all these things can be seen in key poses. Key poses have to be done, or at least 2 of them have to be done, before you can build what's next in the hierarchy, which is a primary breakdown. I didn't know there were different kinds of breakdowns, you're saying. Well, of course not. Here's what a primary breakdown is, okay? If you have pose A and pose B, and you tell the computer, or an in-betweener, or anybody, I want to get from A to B, they're just going to go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm there. Just straight across linear, nothing special. But you want to define that. Now, if you take a look at VTS18, what we did last month, you'll see what I was talking about breakdowns there. Those things that I was showing were primary breakdowns. Bing, bing. Something up here on my forehead would be a primary breakdown. Okay? What do primary breakdowns do? What's their job? Well, first off, you can't build them until you have poses. And how you build them, with the information that they communicate, is dependent upon the poses. Because if your poses say one thing and your breakdown is for a completely different thing, it's not going to work. Because it'll go, okay, A, B, crazy breakdown. It can't work that way, okay? A, B, breakdown, B. A, breakdown, B. Okay? A, breakdown, B. Breakdown, primary breakdown, is dependent upon A and B. It has to work there. You can't go A, breakdown, B. It's just not going to work. That hurts. A lot of young animators, your animation looks like that. Mine did too. Okay, I'm not judging. I'm not judging. Okay? So, that's a primary breakdown. What is its primary job? 3 things are determined in a primary breakdown. Favoring of the move, I'll discuss that in a minute. Overlaps, or drag, or forces, I'll discuss that in a minute after. And then arcs, okay? Motion arcs, and I'll discuss that again. All right, what's favoring? Favoring is when something tends to be more like something else, or like it more, or, you know, treat it better, okay? In animation speak, favoring, all you old 2D guys, you can go to sleep on this one because you were taught this in school. Us CG guys have to learn this stuff the hard way. Favoring, A, B. We put our breakdown, no favoring, is right smack dab in the middle, okay? No favoring. It's not closer to A, it's not closer to B. It's just doink, right there in the middle. However, if I say, I want that value to be more like this, now I'm favoring pose A. Woo. What if I say I want it to be more like this? Interesting. Now I'm favoring pose B. Interesting. What's the point of this? Well, the point of this is to give an overarching sense of what the motion's supposed to be like. Is it a fast out, slow in? Is it a slow out, fast in? Is it a fast, slow, fast? Is it a slow, fast, slow? There's lots of different ways to make movement move. I mean, coming out of a pose into a pose, okay? So, favoring, just remember, is that the value is more like one or the other pose, okay? Its time is not necessarily any different, okay? Pose A, frame 1. Pose B, frame 10. Primary breakdown, frame 5. Okay? But at frame 5, it feels and looks more like A. It's favored. Even though its time is right smack dab in the middle, it looks more like A. Or it looks more like B, even though its time is still at 5. Hopefully it'll make sense. Okay. So that's favoring. What is overlaps or drags? Well, that's when I have a finger. That's what it is. Just woo. That's what it is. Woo. See how I'm dragging it and wee. Overlaps are built into the breakdown, into the drawing. Really, they are. You don't do this. You don't go and then later by pulling things off. I used to do it that way, and it looked like crap. And it doesn't look good, and I'll explain why later, and you'll see it. In fact, I'm going to have a free web tutorial this week explaining why it looks like crap. Okay, so check out my website later this week. Free web tutorial on why breakdowns need to be built, overlaps need to be built into the breakdown drawing themselves. You can't just shuffle keys around and make it work. It looks like crap. Okay, so that's the second job of a breakdown, a primary breakdown. First one is favoring. So let's say we go here, we favor A, and we build a little bit of overlap. Ooh, look at that. And the third one is arcs. We go up here with it. Ooh. That's it. If you just make one drawing that does this, you now have all the things built into it. You got your favoring, you've got your overlaps, and you've got your arcs. Okay, so that's a primary breakdown's job, okay? Favoring, overlaps, arcs. Then there are what we call secondary breakdowns, or at least I call them. I don't know of anybody else who calls them this. I'm crazy, I'm nuts. Sue me, okay? I call them secondary breakdowns. These are the things that help further refine the motion. Okay? They're the things that help to define eases or moving holds or maybe anticipations that are smaller than a frame or two or smaller than 2 frames. Okay, if an anticipation is going to be moved to and held and burned into and moved out of, it's more like a pose. Okay, you kind of have to treat it like a pose. But anticipations, maybe overshoots and settlebacks, moving holds, eases, maybe if you need some extra things for extra lag or extra overlaps, or you need something to help define the arc a little bit better. Let's use our AB thing. A, B, and our primary breakdown is up here. Well, that leaves a lot of this to just kind of feel linear, right? Not looking too good. Well, we need a secondary breakdown right about here that can define things a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more on the arc, maybe a little more on the overlap. So now what we have is, interesting. If I don't have that secondary breakdown, it just does this, which is kind of lame. Computer makes that stuff look like that all the time. So we need a secondary breakdown. Why is it secondary? Because you can't do this until you have this. You just can't do it. It's like putting sprinkles on the cake, okay? You have to have a cake first. Key poses. You have to have frosting on the cake second. Primary breakdown. And then you can put your sprinkles on the cake. Secondary breakdown. Here's why it's a hierarchy of development. If you build a house and you change the foundation, you have to redo the paint job. Yep. You got to tear down the wall, rebuild the wall, and redo the paint job. If you change the foundation dramatically, that's what you have to do. Cake building, cake baking. Do you build cakes? Maybe you do. If you change the shape of the cake, you have to scrape off a good chunk of the frosting and refrost it, and then resprinkle it. Anything that you do at the higher part of the hierarchy affects everything below it. All right? If you change your key poses, you're gonna have to probably, 99% of the time, you're gonna have to change your primary breakdown. And if you change your primary breakdown and your poses, you're 99% of the time gonna have to change your secondary breakdown, because these are all dependent upon what came before. Okay? However, you can change your secondary breakdown and not affect your poses whatsoever. Very true. So therefore, it is lower in the hierarchy than key poses. You can change your primary breakdown, and it may affect your secondary breakdowns, but will not affect your key poses. You can do all different kinds of breakdowns and keep the same key poses. I showed this last month. Last month, with the little hand-drawn section, remember the same 2 drawings for the key poses, we had what? 4 different kinds of breakdowns? 4 different kinds of primary breakdowns. Did not affect the key drawings at all. Therefore, the key drawings were master, primary breakdown was slave. Anything else we did, secondary breakdown is slave to the primary breakdown. Okay? It's a process. You have to have this understanding when you build your animation, or else you're just going to think everything's the same value, I'm going to change it all, and why doesn't it look good? Because one depends on what the other one is doing. This is all very esoteric. I hope it makes some sense. I'm going to show it on the computer in a few moments. Yes, just wait a few moments. You'll see it all come to life. All right. And then the last part of the hierarchy is polish, which everybody seems to be focused on the last part of the hierarchy now. Everywhere I go, people say, I want to know how to polish. I'm thinking, dude, you don't even know how to put up a wall. What do you mean you want to learn how to paint? You don't even know how to bake a cake. What do you want to do? I want to learn how to put on sprinkles. Let's bake a cake first, okay? So, it's a little warm in here, in case you didn't notice. Cuiabá, hot. Brazil, tropical. So, we focus a lot on polish. Polish is all the other things after that, okay? Here's my rule. If your key poses, primary breakdowns, and secondary breakdowns, if they are solid, your polish cleans itself, practically, okay? We're going to show this. I don't know if it won't be this month. It probably won't be next month. 21, good chance. Good chance we'll show it, okay? But we're going to get to it eventually, all right? And before too long, we're going to get to it. Because I know everybody wants to know, how do I polish? You'll learn how to polish. But the key to good polish is great blocking. It really is. If your blocking is great, your polish is easy. Okay? So, that's enough of me rambling about that. So let's take a few moments and I'll hop on the computer and I'll do a easy little scene. I'll just do the arm swing thing, just one swing, just like one pendulum swing, okay? And I'll show you how these things work together and how you can kind of build things, okay? Hopefully it will, all these words that I said, which sound kind of weird and don't have any connection to imagery, will make sense. Hopefully. I'm pretty sure they will, because I've taught this a number of times, and when people get it, they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. So, I think we'll get it this time, and we're going to make sure that the illustration is clear and strong so that you do understand it, and that it is easy to see what I'm talking about. All right, and then after that, we'll wrap up, okay? So, let's hop in and take a look at it.
Okay, let's get in here and start talking about how to build breakdowns. Now I showed you a little bit last week, really quick, rough, what the power of a breakdown, a good breakdown can do. Let's start getting a little more analytical about this. Okay, I know that's scary, but let's try it. Here we have an arm that swings forward and backward as if it's guys walking, okay? You have three poses, the forward pose, the backward pose, and the forward pose. That's it. It's a cycle. Alright, so he's just going to walk. Now, I'm animating this arm in inverse kinematics as a way of illustrating the power of arcs. If I use FK, I'd get some arcs for free, and you know, some of my breakdowns can fool me, but here I'm going to show you what it's like in IK. And by the way, this is a point up to say, it doesn't matter. You can get good arcs in IK. If anybody says they can't get good arcs in IK, it's just I'm going to be honest here, they don't know what they're doing, okay? You can get great arcs in IK, you can get overlap, you can get all the things you want in IK if you want, if you're just willing to do it. Okay, it doesn't mean that people who use FK are bad or people who use IK are bad. It just means that don't be limited. Don't get yourself stuck into a corner saying, oh, I only use this, I only use that. That's a silly way to go. Okay, enough a little soapboxing there. Now, let's go ahead. We're linear tangents. Oh, look at that. We have no in-betweens whatsoever. Our dumb in-betweener, Mr. Computer Boy, does not know how to draw this with any sense of flavor. So he only has 3 keys to work with. So dumb Computer Boy says, okay, I'll just go straight between them. This isn't good. So let's build a breakdown. This is our primary breakdown. The primary breakdown's job, remember, is to define how you get from pose A to pose B. So let's define that. The first part is favoring. Remember, favoring is that the breakdown pose looks more like one pose, or the breakdown looks more like the other. Okay? looks like, not time-wise. The time is the same, it just looks right, looks a certain way. So, since the arm is swinging back, we want to kind of go slow into that. Means we're going to cover less space, i.e. go slower, because when you go slow, you cover less ground, right? Go slower into this breakdown to define our favoring, okay? Because the arm is swinging back. So let's do that, okay? Just taking a look at it. Just to define, I mean, no, the hands are rotating funny. We'll get to that in a second. But just to define how we get there, okay? So cover less space and then cover more space. So it'll be slow, fast. All right, so the front half of this movement will cover less, and the back half of the movement will cover more ground, meaning it will go slower and then it'll go faster. This is irrelevant of easing. Easing is another topic altogether. We'll get to it, and I'll show you why. But favoring and easing are not the same thing, all right? Because you can have a move that has no favoring and still has eases, okay? Because eases is really just a way of defining. Let me go ahead and do this. I'll show you what I mean by a move with there's no favoring on this whatsoever, but you can still ease in and out, okay? The way you can ease in and out is you can just take this and take this value and just go slower into that. So set a key there, move it off over here. We've eased into it, and we can ease out of it too. Now it's junky, you see, because it's just junky, but I'm trying to show you the point that easing, see, we're easing out of that, but we still have no favoring whatsoever. Easing and favoring define spacing, yes, but they are not the same thing, okay? I have a little write-up on that I'll share with you someday. But right now we have no favoring whatsoever. So we want to favor the front side. Okay, so there, that's a bit more like that. Still pretty junky. Now, second thing we want to try and do is we want to try and build some overlap into this. Because right now by building some some favoring in there, you kind of get a little bit of overlap with the elbow for free. But the hand needs some work. So let's go ahead and build some overlap in there with the hand. Okay? Now, it's not great, but there you have it. Now, one cute way of getting yourself some good overlap is to try and remember that each of these items is going to have their own arc. The elbow is going to have an arc, the wrist will have an arc, and the fingers will have an arc. And when we get down to arcs, we're going to see how we can clean those up. So we want to just be mindful of how we can have this stuff overlapping. Okay, I'm working in gimbal mode because this will flip pretty bad if I'm not careful. Okay, so there we've defined a favor and we've defined some overlap, just a bit of overlap to try and build something into this. Okay, because without any overlap it would look like pretty much just like this, where the hand would be an extension of this and it would feel stiff, which we don't want that. You don't want these parts to feel like they're connected and cemented at the wrists or at the joints. Joints have flexibility to them, so you build flexibility into how they move. Okay? So, now we look at our arcs. We start up here, we come down here, we come up here. We're defining the primary arc pretty well. Now, this part needs more work, and we're going to get to that in a second. But this is the job of a primary breakdown. Okay? Now, let's talk about what would happen if we have to change things. If you have to change your key poses, then the way you define your breakdown is going to change. So let's say we do something different. Let's say, just for a point of exploration, that our key pose is that to that. Well, now this breakdown no longer works. It could maybe sort of work, but it's not going to flow the way you want it to. Instead, now you have to change how all this stuff works. Okay? A little twisty there, but you get the idea. If you make major changes to your foundation, which is your poses, if you make major changes, the breakdown you built isn't going to work. Okay? Just I point that out because a lot of times we make changes and things don't work right and we don't know why. This is a little bit of an analytical tool to help you understand if you change one thing, then you're going to have to change another thing. Now, as I was saying, we have a need for more definition here. It's just a little too linear from here to here. So we need what I would call a secondary breakdown. Why is this secondary breakdown? Because you can't really do anything to make it until you have the first one. So let's go ahead and make a secondary breakdown somewhere right around here. And let's go ahead and see what we can do about better defining the rest of this arc. Okay, so we're starting to get there. Alright, it's a little flat across the bottom here, so let's bring it up. There we go. It comes up a little bit. It's still junky, but I'm showing you the scrub, not because I work this way, but just to show you we are defining the arc. Normally I wouldn't bother scrubbing at this point. I'm just trying to find how this stuff works. I have an eye for seeing how this thing arcs. A lot of people don't. It takes a while to develop that eye. So I show you the way that a lot of us are used to seeing it, which is scrub it. Okay? And so I'm trying to, again, now this secondary breakdown does many of the same things as the primary breakdown. Maybe not so much on the favoring side, but it is a part of eases. Okay? So it's coming up just a little bit. So come here, there, down. Now, this tells me that maybe I could use a little more arc on my primary breakdown. It's okay. You can go back and fix things a little bit. Okay? Because we're building the secondary breakdown, we're finding, well, we need a little more arc here. It's not a big thing. You can go back and forth. I mean, there's no law that says once you're done with your poses, you can never go back and touch them once you start building your breakdowns. That's not what I'm talking about. This is not a close the door, move on, and never look back sort of idea. If you need to, sometimes you might need to take this pose back here and tweak it a little bit too. Well, you're saying you're changing the foundation. Don't you have to change everything else? Remember, I said major changes to your foundation require significant changes to other parts. So I'm just kind of cleaning this up as I go. Okay? And I have this cruddy one here that I must delete. Sorry about that. It was a little side diversion. Okay, so we have a secondary breakdown right there that's doing a pretty decent job of describing some things. Okay, and it's just helping to fill in the blanks there. All right, now the one thing I might want to do in order to have that ease out a little bit more is I might make it a bit more like this one. Okay, just to have the ease a little bit more. Nothing major, just a bit more like it. And here's the thing, there are no limit on the number of secondary breakdowns you need. Okay, there's no law that says you only do 1 or 2 or 7. Okay, we needed one there for sure. Looking at it, we could probably use another one right here because of IK. Okay, if this were forward kinematics, you wouldn't have to worry about it because the arm swing would take care of it. But there, I just put a little bit of one right there to kind of help define that arc a little bit better. And probably pull it down just a bit. And let me take the swing of the hand. And so we're getting there, okay? All right, so I'm just stepping through these things. And I'm kind of noticing that I'm starting to build a motion, and I'm not messing with curve editors or anything. It's just this is how you would do it if you had to draw it. I'm not really timing any of this. I normally would do all this stuff on subsequent frames. I left in between frames here to kind of help illustrate what I'm doing for those who can't see stuff just step through. Normally there would be no in-betweens in here at all for me the way I work. Okay, but I left them in there for other folks to kind of get along with the idea. Now, I do realize that this part right here is a bit linear. So it goes from there to there. So somewhere halfway in between there, and I'm just going to use a halfway point because why not? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit more in there by way of defining just a little bit more of that arc. And I might make that overlap a little stronger there, maybe. Let's see what I can do with the gimbals. Okay. And looking at it, I think this overlap back here probably is a little bit on the strong side. But we could also push this pose a little bit. Okay. And we can push this pose a little bit too. And if we push this pose a little bit, we will go ahead and bring it back here and just copy it so that we have a nice cycle. Okay, and the hand is turning over a bit too much right there. I can just tell that it's turning over too much. Okay, so there we have it. We have a pose. I'll take that back. A pose and another pose. We built a primary breakdown that had favoring, overlap, and arc. We needed other breakdowns that were dependent upon this one to help define and fill in the blanks. I decided that for this move, because I'm in IK, I needed 3 extra drawings, okay? So, now, timing is something else altogether. You have timing in mind when you do this stuff, but this is not, I mean, this 7 is, the reason why I chose that is because it's halfway between 1 and 12. 13 or 15, I chose that because it's halfway between 12 and 18. And I chose 18 because it's halfway between 12 and 24. And I chose 12 because it's halfway between 1 and 24. There's no timing in here at all. It's just drawings. So, if you were to play this, there would be some weirdness to the motion, and you could clean that up in timing by shuffling things around. You can time it in image-based timing program like Monkey Jam, or you can just do it in Maya, or whatever your program is that you're using, and just take these keys and move them around, do a play blast, make notes, and say, okay, well that's a little slow through there, so if it's slow, you just go ahead and put the keys closer together. If it's fast, you go ahead and spread the keys out to slow it down. Okay? So, there we go. Now, remember what I said about making changes and how there's a hierarchy? Let's say we change this arc. Let's say we change this breakdown to have something much different in mind. Okay? It's not invalid, it's just different, right? Because this pose to this pose, we could use that as a breakdown. It's a shallower breakdown, but it's there, okay? The hand drag is a little more extreme, and you know, the favoring might be a little more extreme, and the arc would be a little more shallow. But it's still valid if we wanted to do that. Well, now all of a sudden, these secondary breakdowns that we built don't work. Notice how it jerks? Instead of coming in a nice arc, it kind of comes down, then straight across, and then it goes down, and then up and up. That's mess. That whole business is a mess. When I step through it, you can see it just looks like junk. And that's because I changed something further up in the hierarchy than these other drawings. So, again, major changes to things higher in the hierarchy of information require you to redo things lower. So, to do this to this, then I need to take this one and probably go up and probably roll the hand up under a little bit more. A little bit tricky with the gimbals here, but that's just life in CG. Okay, we're getting there. Getting there. Alright, so the hand's up a bit much. And even here it's up a bit much. Point back to it. Okay. So now we've fixed that secondary breakdown, but the position is still a little bit weird. So let's get a nice arc here. All right. It's getting there. We're getting a bit of an arc. Okay. Now, well, this one, good grief. Let's just throw it out because it's just too hard to fix it. Let's go back here and fix this to this. Well, this is too far out of range. So, all right, so it comes up right about here at this line in the grid. So this guy should be a little bit below it to make a nice arc. Shallow arc, but we still want to make an arc. Okay, not all arcs are big and deep. They're just arcing. So we have an arc there. And we could also probably take a look at how our hand's overlapping. All right. So we have that. So now we fix that breakdown. And we might need another one in here just to kind of help define things just a little bit more. Maybe not though, because it's such a shallow arc that you might, yeah, you know what, I'm looking at it, I just don't need it. So now I changed the primary breakdown to be much higher up than it was before, and because of that I had to change the secondary breakdowns because they help fill in the blanks between the breakdown and the pose. So repeat again. Primary breakdowns help you fill out the information between the pose and a pose. Secondary breakdowns help you fill out information between primary breakdowns and a pose. Okay? You may need 1, 2, 5, who knows how many secondary breakdowns to help define things. But you'll need them because if you don't have them, the computer will not know how to draw this. And while this is weird, it's a weird bit of motion, there's a little bit of a gimbal problem right there with the fingers. But at the very least, I could throw that over into curves, clean it up, and the motion would be valid. Okay? It may be a little bit hard to understand what I'm going through. I hope that I made it clear with this example. This is pretty esoteric stuff, but once you get your head around it, you start realizing, oh my gosh, this stuff starts to make sense. I can build my motion. I can do it. Just now you can understand how to fix things. All right. Again, there's no timing in this. I just chose these numbers arbitrarily. Normally, I would just do them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and space them and time them out later.
All right. Now I hope that made sense. I hope that I was able to illustrate all these weird abstract concepts. But the thing to remember is everything we make in the world has process dependencies. Everything does, okay? It doesn't matter if you're making animation, skyscrapers, fountain pens, tacos. It doesn't matter. Everything has a dependency, okay? It's when we come to terms with this. I mean, there's some folks think, well, art, you know, this is too technical. Animation's an art, man. You can't cage art, man. Yes, you can. Okay, you can. You can, if you wanted to, take a very fine brush, a tiny little brush, and paint a large canvas with it. Your hand will be crippled, your brain will be insane, and it won't look well structured. Okay, it may. Ooh, this is new, oh, this is different. And you might get some critics to say, this is fantastic, but you'll be able to make, what, 5 paintings in your life? I'm assuming that if you're animating, there's a reason why, okay? And if you reason why is you want to either tell stories or you want to work in this business or you want to be involved in things, employers are kind of drastic to expect results. It's a rather unfortunate fact of the private sector. They actually want you to do something for their money that they give you, usually in a timely fashion. So this is helpful if you're interested in actually working in this business. And if you're not interested in working in this business, then I'm going to assume that at the very least you want to tell stories. It's difficult to tell stories if you can't ever get the words out of your mouth. You know what I'm saying? So this is all a process to help us get the words out of our mouth. I know it sounds a little technical, it's a little abstract, it seems a little heavy-handed, but trust me, process is not shackling art. Once you have a methodology or a process that works for you, it sets your art free. Go back to the illustration of the watercolor painter. If a watercolor painter takes years to study how to control watercolors, how to get different things to go together with watercolors, if you understand how to make the medium work for them, they're free. They're free to do whatever their mind imagines. Whatever their mind imagines. So, same is true for animation. If we come to a point where we understand how we are going to accomplish these things, then they become, and we practice them, and they become second nature to this. And these are things that we don't no longer think about. I no longer think about this stuff. To be honest with you, the only time I sat down to think about it is, one, to figure it out, and two, is to teach it. Right? But this stuff is so comfortable to me because I've been animating for enough years, and it's comfortable to traditional animators too, because this is the only way these guys work. They don't have a computer that gives them magic drawings. Everything comes off of their hand. Well, okay, so that they don't go crazy, they have to figure out how to do this, and they've figured it out 80 years ago. No, we've forgotten it. This is the kind of stuff that sets you free. If you have a process that works, if you understand the nature, the universal law of development of anything, dependencies of processes, you are free to do whatever your mind imagines. You have this really crazy, insane, complex motion of a guy doing something nutty. If you look at the whole thing, you think, this is incredible. I have no confidence. I cannot do this. So you scale back. I'm going to do something a little simpler. Well, if you understand how to do things, you're like, oh, it's easy. There's some key poses. Let me see the primary breakdowns, secondary breakdowns right there, and polish it. Anything you want to do. Anything you want to do. You can start breaking it down and say anything. Do it any style, any way you want. You're free. The longer we languish in ignorance about dependencies of processes, the longer we're held prisoner to fear of the unknown, which is, how in the world am I going to do that? Okay? Confidence is a wonderful thing. It lets you do some pretty neat stuff. So, what are we going to do next month? Next month we're going to hop in. We're going to get back into our Murray scene. I promise. I know I said I would do it this month, but I felt like I needed to explain this more. I needed to really explain this more, so that when I start doing it next month on Murray, I can talk through it and I can say, this is a primary breakdown, and I don't have to explain it all. All right? And I can say, oh, this is I'm going to do a secondary breakdown right here, and I don't have to explain it all. I'll explain it here, and then I'll do it there. And then we'll move on. Okay? I know we're kind of a little stuck on this scene, but we're going to move on. It's important that we do this in a way. I mean, a lot of times folks say, well, why do you go in the order you go in? In my mind, it all has to, you have to have things in order. It just makes sense, okay? So, that's it for this month. I really do appreciate your patience. If any of this was really, really confusing to you, send me an email, and hopefully, 100 of you don't send me an email, but, if you have a question about it, go ahead and send me an email. I'll try and answer you. I'll try. I mean, I'm really busy these days, but I'll try. Can't promise anything, but if I feel like I need a clarification, next month I'll take the time to clarify things. So if I get a lot of emails saying, I don't get it, what are you talking about? That's pretty weird, man. That part about primary breakdowns is weird, man. Well, I'm not making fun of you, but I understand. If it takes a little bit to understand this stuff. Hopefully the illustrations were clear. If not, I'll touch on it again next month, and we'll take into it, okay? All the same, thanks for hanging out. Hope this was helpful to you. I hope this gives you some freedom to understand that you can do anything you want in animation once you understand how, and this is the how, okay? You got no shortage of people who will tell you what good animation looks like, who will look at a scene you did and give you feedback, say, well, the elbow's out there, the knee's off right there, the hip needs a better arc right there, the head needs a drag right there, the eye line's off right there. I mean, there's no shortage of people who do that for you. Critique is good. Trains your eye. But what I want to try and do is help you accomplish what it is you want to do. Okay? Till then, everybody be good, behave yourselves, don't drink and drive, don't drink and walk. Drink and sit? I don't know. I suppose you can do that. Anyhow, be good to each other. God bless.